ideal world, making a great movie would be enough for a film to find its audience and succeed at the box office. But as time has proven again and again, incredible films bomb all the damn time. And with that in mind, I'm Josh from What Culture, and today we're talking about awesome movies that didn't deserve to bomb. First up, one of Ewan Patterson's favourites, Last Action Hero. Last Action Hero is nothing if not a film that was wildly ahead of its time. A ludicrously meta action comedy starring Arnold Schwarzenegger as Jack Slater, the protagonist of an action movie franchise which a young boy is magically transported into. With John McTiernan's high-wire action filmmaking and writer Shane Black's pithy script, this is one of the most ambitious and downright bonkers action films of the 90s, yet it also sadly fell on deaf ears when it released back in 1993. For one, there was enormous pre-release anti-hype against the film, as many publications labelled it a bomb before it even came out, off the back of its apparently poor test screenings. Beyond this, many expecting to see another down-the-line Schwarzenegger action flick got something much stranger, something that many at the time just weren't prepared for. And finally, we cannot ignore the elephant, or rather dinosaur, in the room, that Sony ill-advisedly released this film just a week after Jurassic Park, which categorically ate its breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Last Action Hero ultimately grossed a poor $137.3 million on an $85 million budget, leaving it miles away from profitability. However, in more recent years, as fourth wall breaking cinema has become more in vogue, thanks Deadpool, I guess, the tide of public opinion on the film has at least shifted somewhat, and it has way more defenders today. And speaking of defenders, next up was a movie I love, Better Man. While it wasn't remotely surprising that the recent Robbie Williams biopic Better Man tanked at the box office, in an ideal world it would have made big bucks relative to its actual quality. Michael Gracey's bracingly bold and inventive musical drama stuck two fingers up to the conventions of the musician biopic, most of all by presenting Williams himself in the form of an anthropomorphic chimpanzee to reflect how Williams views himself as unevolved. But given that almost every scene then required extensive VFX work, it ended up costing a pretty penny, $110 million to be precise. And so, doing a little napkin maths with the 2.5 times rule in place, Better Man needed to gross around $275 million to be a success. But alas, it failed to recoup even 10% of that figure, topping out at a paltry $22.5 million. Now, this was attributed not only to the mainstream alienating nature of the whole chimpanzee thing, but also the fact that Williams isn't particularly well known outside of Europe, ensuring that the film sank like a stone in many key markets. Better Man was at least raved about by critics and landed itself a Best Visual Effects Oscar nomination, and it's also easy to see it becoming something of a cult classic amidst a sea of sterile generic biopics over the coming years. Like Robbie Williams himself, I think time will be kind to this flick. And speaking of cult classics, next up we have Office Space. Mike Judge's Office Space is unarguably one of the most perceptive cinematic satires ever made, a delicious takedown of workplace ennui with Judge's usual penchant for humour that's both cartoonish and crushingly relatable. And even though Judge made the film for a modest $10 million in 1999, it grossed just $12.2 million theatrically, something Judge himself blamed on poor marketing, which he felt failed to sell the film as the smart, quirky satire that it was. But to say that time has been kind to Office Space is something of an understatement. The film became a word-of-mouth hit on home video and has endured in pop culture for more than 25 years at this point, in large part due to the ongoing relevance of its subject matter and meme-worthy nature of several unforgettable sequences. We may not be in the 1990s anymore, but so much of Office Space still rings true in current year, and it's easy to picture this one being even more revered by the time we hit 2050. And that's a fitting fate for a film that never got the audience that it deserved theatrically. Next up, we have a bit of a surprise, as we're talking about Children of Men. Children of Men is undeniably one of the greatest sci-fi films of the last 20 years, a mesmerizing, visually stunning dystopian thriller that's expertly directed by Alfonso Cuarón and impeccably acted by its ensemble cast. The film remains popular enough today that you might well assume that it was at least a modest box office hit on original release, but that couldn't be further from the truth. Even with Cuarón's name behind it and a wealth of awards buzz, Children of Men grossed just $70.5 million globally, a tad less than its $75 million budget. Now, this was attributed to numerous reasons, but most of all, Universal's struggles to market the film, deciding to sell it as a more straightforward action thriller while somewhat downplaying its bleak tone. Furthermore, releasing it on Christmas Day in the US probably didn't help, when audiences were unsurprisingly gravitating towards more heartwarming fare like Rocky Balboa, Night at the Museum, and The Pursuit of Happiness. Yet the film's box office failure seemingly didn't damage Cuarón's ability to get a big-budget sci-fi film made, as his very next project was the unforgettable Gravity, which thankfully fared much better commercially. Next up is one of my favorites, Silence. Martin Scorsese is arguably our greatest living director, but that doesn't mean every single one of his films has been a stone-cold commercial hit. Case in point, the 2016 filmmaker followed up his mega hit, The Wolf of Wall Street, with a decidedly less mainstream passion project. The old one for you, one for me situation. Though widely praised by critics and those few who actually left their house to see it, the faith-based period drama set in Japan failed to stoke much general interest, and even with a relatively low $50 million budget, by Scorsese standards anyway, it made just $24 million globally. That is a bad result for a film from a GOAT-tier director with a heft of awards hype behind it, indicating the challenges that faced adult-skewing dramas even before the pandemic detonated the box office landscape. Silence's failure likely goes a way to explain why Scorsese himself has jumped into bed with streamers to produce both the movies that he's directed since, those of course being The Irishman for Netflix and Killers of the Flower Moon for Apple, both of which had astronomically higher budgets. It's a sad sign of the times perhaps, but at least somebody's still giving Marty the money he needs to produce his incredible epics. Next, we have Kubo and the Two Strings. To be fair, this list could be filled with films produced by brilliant stop-motion animation outfit Laika. Considering that their 5 feature film releases to date, just one of them, Coraline, has actually managed to turn an honest-to-God profit at the box office. All 4 films the company has released since have underperformed, and the most tragic flop of the group must surely be 2016's outstanding fantasy film, Kubo and the Two Strings. Kubo is a heartwarming and endlessly creative story which uses the studio's signature eye-popping stop-motion mastery to bring its fantastical feudal Japan setting to life in a totally unique and enchanting way. It's also brilliantly acted by the top-draw voice cast including Charlize Theron, Ralph Fiennes, Rooney Mara, and Matthew McConaughey. Despite rave reviews and Oscar nominations for Best Animated Feature and Best Visual Effects, Kubo grossed just $76.2 million against a $60 million budget, making it an outright flop. As for how Laika can withstand so many box office duds, well, it's co-owned by Phil Knight, who happens to be a co-founder of Nike with an estimated net worth of over $30 billion. That is to say, his coffers can certainly withstand a little bit of damage. Next up, we have True Romance. True Romance is just one of those ludicrously entertaining films that we've all seen a bunch of times, enough that the operating assumption is that it must have been a box office hit. With Tony Scott's ultra-stylish filmmaking, Quentin Tarantino's evocative script, and a pitch-perfect cast, how could this 1993 romantic crime thriller not have recouped its mere $12.5 million budget? Well, shockingly enough, True Romance grossed just a hair more than its price tag, tapping out at a disappointing $12.6 million. This makes it one of Scott's lowest grossing films, and one that, of course, didn't benefit much from the association with Tarantino, who was then still a year removed from helming his beloved debut, Reservoir Dogs. Warner Brothers apparently struggled to market the film as well, emphasizing the love story in a way that may well have turned off those more interested in the crime thriller element. Furthermore, it was up against decidedly more high-profile awards-courting films like The Fugitive and The Age of Innocence, ensuring that it didn't stand a damn chance. Thankfully, True Romance has become a hit in the years that followed and has probably performed well enough on home video to actually be profitable in the long term. Next up, we're talking about Magnolia. Paul Thomas Anderson may be one of our greatest directors, but of his 9 releases to date, just 2 of them have turned a modest profit theatrically, those being Boogie Nights and There Will Be Blood. But perhaps the most surprising flop amongst PTA's filmography is Magnolia, his iconic, sprawling 1999 ensemble drama, which received 3 Oscar nominations and has been consistently lauded as a masterpiece ever since it came out. Beyond that, it's got Tom freaking Cruise in it, in an Oscar-nominated performance, no less, and yet it only managed to gross $48.5 million on a $37 million budget. Even though Anderson put just about every dime on the screen for this one, it still wasn't enough for one of the boldest and most ambitious, not to mention excellent, films of the last 30 years to make back. Granted, a 3-hour drama that tackles some heavy subject matter probably wasn't ever going to be a monster hit, but breaking even should have absolutely been on the cards here. At least Magnolia is still very much heralded today and likely continues to rake in some solid home video revenues. Next up, another cult favorite, Serenity. Serenity is Joss Whedon's cinematic continuation of his beloved sci-fi western TV series Firefly, which, despite being cancelled after just a single season, became such a monster seller on DVD that Whedon was given a $39 million budget to produce this big screen follow-up. And though Firefly's legion of superfans, browncoats as they like to be known, passionately promoted the film leading up to its 2005 release, it ultimately grossed just $40.4 million, just a fraction over its budget, and therefore ensuring that it failed to turn a profit. Though some analysts predicted that Serenity would open at #1 in North America, it actually opened softer than expected, the vocal enthusiasm of the series' most passionate fans not translating into that wider mainstream appeal. It is infuriating though, given that Serenity is one of the most entertaining sci-fi adventure films of the last quarter century and was initially intended to lead to either a sequel film or another season of Firefly, if not both. Though Serenity sold well on home video, it just wasn't enough to sustain studio interest in this incredible universe. Next up, Ed Wood. By 1994, Tim Burton was an undeniable star director, having 5 acclaimed box office hits to his name in a row, at which point he ventured off to make a one-for-me passion project, a biopic of infamous cult filmmaker Ed Wood. But even with some of the best reviews of Burton's career and major Oscar buzz, as well as 2 eventual Oscar wins, Ed Wood made just $13.8 million at the box office, falling short of even its meager $18 million price tag. Now, to be fair, an Ed Wood biopic was never going to be box office dynamite, and the film's commercial appeal was further limited by its black and white presentation and strange overall tone. But the film failed to catch on outside of the cinephile sphere, even with Johnny Depp in the lead role, and yet it remains one of the most creative and ingeniously executed films of Burton's entire filmography. And for what it's worth, it's my personal favorite. I think it's absolutely spectacular and the director's best. And that's saying something, because he's made some good movies, I'll have you know. So that's our list. If you want to watch more videos like this, click one of them on the screen right now for more juicy content, or head over to the What Culture channel for even more videos to get lost in.